the New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain, and today we have Peter Ellington, Head of Pricing and Engineering at Singer Electric, joining us. Peter, great to have you joining the show.
Hi Paul, thanks for having me.
Yeah, real pleasure. Now, today we've actually got an episode we're sort of delving into the tech news of the week, looking at some things sort of New Zealand related and global. But for those who are wondering who's Singer Electric and a little bit about yourself, maybe just tell folks where you fit into this sort of big wide world of technology and so on in New Zealand.
Yeah, thanks. So we've been around for 70 years. We've been around 8 years in the charger space and upgrading clients' infrastructure to transition from the ICE vehicles to the electric vehicles. So part of that, I run our engineering and pricing team, and we work closely with clients to really get that transition to meet their electrical needs, really.
Yeah, and I guess the role of sort of electrifying transport is very much about sort of a technology and innovation thing as we're having to do new things, and obviously you and your team have been going from starting with I guess the electric cars now going up to much bigger things, which we've got a separate episode that we will delve into in terms of electrifying the ferries. Well, let's jump into the tech news of the week. There's a lot going on. We've got the international players, continue to, I guess, sort of, stir up trouble at times, and then sometimes it's the government that's stirring things up. But we've been reading sort of that Google have been responding to the government on this news bargaining bill. And, we all know we go online, whether it's social media or, searching on Google, and we get bits and pieces of news. And there just seems to be this sort of backwards and forwards around, well, who's benefiting here? Is it of more benefit to the consumer? Or is it, is it benefit to the news media publishers, or is it more benefit to the sort of social networks and the Googles? And there does seem to be a fair bit of debate. I think we've seen different countries, Australia, Canada, and so on, sort of move in terms of putting in legislation that says, hey, Facebook, if you're going to put news up on your site that pulls headlines and things from media, then you got to front up and pay for that. Even when on the flip side, if anyone likes that and they click on it, then that's feeding traffic directly to that news outlet, which significantly benefits the news outlets that are featured. And of course, we've seen these moves where we're in some situations, news has been removed from a social media platform like Facebook. Because they're like, well, it's not really worth anything to us. We don't make people, and to a degree it draws people away from their platforms when they go and click on it. So yeah, it's just interesting to see this stuff coming back, and that's kind of a level of what we're hearing from Google is that it's they're kind of saying, hey, this isn't really something that generates for them, but of course we see others like Australia that have gone before us. So, it's I think something we continue to follow, and I think it's challenging in terms of where you might think the balance lands. It's I guess similar to the challenges in terms of working out how do we tax these big multinational companies, the Amazons and Googles and Facebooks and so on of this world, and there have been moves to put extra taxes on them, but in most cases those things just come back on say the New Zealand advertisers that are maybe advertising or doing things on these platforms, as they just throw the tax back to New Zealand anyway. So it doesn't necessarily benefit anyone. Do you spend much time on social media, or how do you get your news? Are you someone that sort of stumbles upon it in social media or on Google, or?
No, I usually just go direct to the news media source. Really, I'm not that big on social media. And so I just go to the main whatever the source is really. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not something that you see necessarily. Now, one of the other things is in terms of local news, we've been hearing about Marlborough District Council have put out some information about this real-time guidance age for mariners, those going out on the water in the Tory Channel, and what they're calling sort of groundbreaking visual aid that provides real-time guidance for mariners on what's happening with sort of the currents and the tides there. So that's landed on their website. Is this sort of a big deal, or is this the sort of thing we expect our councils to be just to be staying up with the play and helping out with?
Yeah, I think so. I think anything to improve health and safety, on the water, has got to be helpful, especially using the technology that's available. AI and the processing power around that. More councils, the better. Really, should be looking into that.
Yeah, and this is really relates to the movement between the North Island and the South Island, isn't it? That's what the Tory Channel is that movement. So yeah, I haven't delved in too deeply to what the challenges are, but I think for anyone that's been across there in a time where it gets a bit rough or whatnot, that sort of information is helpful. And yeah, we still see, with all the technology available to us today, people getting into trouble, on the water. So I think making the information available that helps sort of lower those risks, and especially for those who maybe wouldn't necessarily get access to that data so easily. I think if you're running a Cook Strait ferry or something like that, then you can afford to tap into the very best of information. But when it comes to others, that might not be so easy. Although I think some of the information they shared around this, they call it the Tide and Current Project, it was actually funded with $250,000 from Kiwi Rail. So that was given to council. So yeah, really interesting. So obviously there is actually an element here where this broader investment will be used at that sort of level right through. And of course, we have continued to see incidences involving the ferries, and I think that this one actually was sort of imposed on Kiwi Rail following an accident that they had in 2019 they had to invest back in.
I mean, it makes sense. It's kind of the next iteration of charts and GPS and using all the information available and putting it in one sort of place for safety. They could use it all around the country.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. They're working with a company, Oceanum, who have done the R&D, all the sort of mathematical models and built the visual elements and aspects of the technology. So yeah, hopefully this plays out well. And I think if you kind of look back through history, often technology has played a key role when it comes to reducing how many people are impacted by accidents, the accidents that kind of can happen in different areas, hopefully this is something that we see less dramas out on the Tory Channel. And other things going on. There's some sort of pretty big happenings on the global front. Apple in the news again. We're now in this world where Apple have moved to USB-C charging across their newest phones. And it's kind of, I guess, the next phase in this sort of pressure that the European Union has been putting on Apple is Apple are now basically going to allow rival app stores on iPhones and iPads, which just seems like massive news because there's only been one way to get your apps on your devices, and that as a headline thing just seems like wow. That's going to be a huge disruption to Apple's revenue streams and so on. When you delve into it, of course, the story's somewhat more complicated, also allowing different browser engines. But because this is being limited to the EU, what it creates is a situation where you can imagine that a lot of entities just might not bother, or it might be it might be too hard. Is it worth launching an app store when it only targets a minority of the population of Apple users? And we've heard this with around Firefox that they're a non-profit entity but behind them, the Mozilla Foundation, and they've said, look, this is a real challenge. It's really expensive to develop an app, and if they're going to take advantage of these sort of latest rulings, now they've got to develop two. They've got to develop the one that uses the Apple browser technology and the back end, and then one that uses theirs that's only going to go to a minority of users. So a little bit complicated, and not as simple as what we've seen with this nudge for USB-C charging. That's obviously had a global impact and will help make I think life easier for a lot of people in a very, very small way, but it does make a difference. It makes life simpler.
Yeah, it does.
And we'll probably have a conversation when we delve into talking about vehicle charging and charging of electric boats and so on around the opportunity to sort of standardise in those areas too, because there's been a lot of work going on. But probably the bigger story that's attracting a lot of interest on YouTube and the like is the Apple Vision Pro, which has landed. So we're seeing those initial reviews and demonstration videos being shared online and millions of views as Apple have finally got to the point where their foray into what they're calling spatial computing and what probably the rest of us would call VR headsets, has arrived. Look, it looks like really nice hardware, which is what we expect from Apple. Really nice equipment. Starting price of what is it, over $3,500 US dollars. And then, like with your iPhones and other things, it's do you want the 256, do you want the 512, or the 1 terabyte model? So all of those things sort of bump it up more. But when you look at Apple's play, it looks as though they're delivering something that leans into their success when it comes to creating an ecosystem. Some really, really great software. Their success when it comes to developing really nice premium hardware, and so you end up with a very, very nice product, a very high price point. And one of the questions which is inevitably comes is there the killer app? What's the thing that's going to make it worthwhile? I guess if we're talking in New Zealand terms, we're looking around $6,000 when we talk about converting that, and you've got GST in there and so on. So it's a chunky purchase, not actually even available outside of the US anyway. So it's a little bit of a moot point. What are your thoughts? I noticed you came in. You're wearing your Apple Watch. You got your iPhone there, so you're within the Apple ecosystem.
Yep.
What are your thoughts? Is this the next thing that you have to have just yet, or are you someone that sort of would sit back and watch a bit, see what happens?
I think I'd sit back and see what happens. $6,000 to me is a bit on the steep end. And yeah, what can you use it for at the moment? You know, is it just for gaming, or is there other applications as well that you could use it for? So it's an interesting piece of kit. I'm sure in the future it might be used for some great things, but not sure currently.
Yeah, and this question often gets asked: is there a killer app that makes this the thing that you should buy? And it's, in some ways it's a valid question, but in other ways, when I look at technology, some technologies don't necessarily have that killer app for everyone. But when you put together all the little bits and pieces, some probably bigger and more important than others, you eventually get to a point where, for some people that is the piece of technology that they want. Your Apple Watch, for instance, I mean, is there anything that super excites you around your Apple Watch, or is it's just something that's a step up on analog tech?
I think it was more around the sort of health apps that you can get and links to your phone. That's kind of what attracted me to that. So that, I don't know if that can be somehow relatable back to this VR piece of kit, but
interesting. One of the videos that was shared online, and this I'm trying to remember if it was Marcus Brownlee's one, and he was playing table tennis with the VR headset on, and it was more to sort of demonstrate. Because it does completely enclose your eyes, you cannot see, you cannot see through it. So it's not, an augmented reality in the traditional sense, but it's got cameras and so on, and it will pass the video back, and a very small delay, I think 12 milliseconds. So, you're talking just, a little bit over what's that, hundredth of a second in terms of its delay. So it's very fast, and he was able to sort of successfully play a game of table tennis. So there are so many possibilities with how this could play out. You get used to that, and then what about another variation where the person you're playing with, maybe you played with them yesterday, you want to have another game with them, but the technology's so good that it can generate it. So from your perspective, there is no difference, because it's the video, everything's sort of virtualized. Now, not that they've got that capability today, but join the dots up to what are those possibilities, and then if you're really into a particular sport, and you're comfortable wearing a headset while you're doing it, whether it's out jogging, would you wear one when you're riding a bike down the street on the road? I mean, there's all sorts of possibilities as to how bad that could be, or possibilities of how with a augmented vision, maybe that could help you, and a built-in kind of AI level trainer who's, I guess, drawn from data of performance coaches that are training at an Olympic or an All Black type level and so on. And it might be like, I'd do it, right? But that's going to be probably quite unique to an individual in terms of what are the things that would push you across those lines. One of the other examples that was mentioned, and it might have been on the same one, was trying to use a laptop on an aeroplane. You got someone right next to you who's looking at the screen. You might have confidential things. You might just prefer privacy with whatever you're doing, and you can use the Apple Vision Pro, connected to, say, MacBook, and you can be working away using your keyboard and trackpad on the MacBook, and viewing your screen as kind of as large as you want within your headset. So there's quite a lot of possibilities in terms of how it can be used.
Yeah, and I think another one would be potentially in construction with BIM 3D modelling. So
building information management technology.
So you build what's going to be built within a computer model, and then you put all the different elements in, and to be able to stand on site and see the real world, but also see the model, to ensure that things are getting put in the right position, could be a really helpful tool as well.
Yep. And look, I sort of like to sit down with people face to face and so on. We're sitting next to each other around the table here. do you foresee a world where we would wear something like this and you would create that experience that is as though you were in a room with someone, or do you think that's just dreaming to imagine that we would, do that and feel that that's as good as being with somebody in person? What do you think?
I don't know. I think, we've got Teams at the moment, or, video calling.
Yeah.
You don't quite have that connection. So I don't think you'll ever beat the face-to-face sitting at a table. But who knows? I mean, you might be able to get that same sort of feel out of that VR, but
a step closer, maybe.
A step closer, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not quite the same as being able to, I don't know, the virtual coffees and and whatnot. Not quite the
maybe
same.
A virtual beer is definitely not the same.
Yes. Oh, well, it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out. Look, this is V1 for Apple. It always does disappoint me, somewhat when our big tech vendors sort of launch in the US market and the rest of the world sort of sits back a little bit. And yeah, at this point, it's not the sort of thing that's tempted me to jump on a plane and fly to the States and buy one on launch day. But I would certainly love to have a play with the technology. And look, I recommend for anyone that's that's at all interested and curious, look up some of these videos that are online. It is fascinating. And look, when Apple get into something, they usually get into it big, and they usually keep iterating. And when you look at sort of the price and the scale of Apple's fans, you can imagine that even this initial release is multi-billions in terms of the revenue that it generates. And look, they're looking for that long-term playoff. So if we look back to the first iPhone, probably not that exciting these days, but it was a really important part of the journey. And it took people buying it and giving feedback and so on for there to be better and better iterations. Good to follow that one and see how Apple go. And look, I think there'll be people on probably both extremes and everywhere in between. From this is just a complete waste of money through to people that absolutely love it. But I imagine it's going to be a smaller kind of niche audience at this stage that are going to be jumping in. Also, sort of on the global front, but relevant here in New Zealand, Microsoft have all these different co-pilots that they've been launching just to confuse absolutely all of us around what's going on. They had their kind of mini start with their co-pilot for 365, Microsoft 365. Late last year, they have now sort of completed the availability, I suppose, and now anybody can get that. Interesting to note, though, maybe Microsoft are a little bit scared that folks won't love Copilot for 365, because from what I'm seeing, you have to buy it on an annual basis, which is very unusual in this world of cloud subscriptions. I mean, it's not completely unusual. There are some vendors that's your only option is to buy annually, but most of Microsoft's things you've been able to buy on a month-by-month basis, and it sort of feels like they're hoping over the next 12 months they're going to iterate enough and people are going to experiment with it enough that they will stay with them, but that if people just had it month to month, that after a month a bunch of people might actually just cancel. So I think at this stage it's something that maybe they're hoping will grow on people, and over time as more people use it and figure out its role, that it will come into play. So interesting to see. I think it's around in the sort of $600 or so price here in New Zealand. So you imagine that's a fair commitment. You got say I've got a team of about 15 people. So to give that across the board to a team, that's a $10,000 commitment. So
You want to get that.
People are going to
that
want to return on
yeah.
that investment, and I think some absolutely will, and that will be an easy decision to make for certain team members. Other organisations will get that, I'm sure, across the board. And other organisations I talk to are just completely uninterested. So, I'm very, very curious to see how it evolves and how our organisations in New Zealand end up, leveraging these technologies in all its form, whether it's writing an email for you, which it jumps in and asks you when you've got an email as to how give it some direction to write a response, and it will write those responses through to writing up documents for you, designing and creating presentations in PowerPoint, or capturing a Teams meeting and then telling you the action points at the end, which is probably a pretty good use case.
Yeah,
as long as it doesn't encourage people to sort of switch off and miss a lot of important stuff that might happen in a meeting.
yeah.
Is that something that sort of caught your attention? That's what's happening on the AI front as far as the work you do.
Oh, we definitely see a lot more of it. It does make, I mean, a lot of people are using it. I haven't really dived into it too much with on the work front. We obviously use the technology to help us on the Microsoft suite, in the whole SharePoint thing, and but no, I haven't. We don't really use that too much. I can see a great use for it, but no, not that I know of. Anyway.
Yeah. And I think like what we're seeing does vary from organisation to organisation, and often there'll be individuals that really they jump in first, they get their feet wet, those sort of early adopters, and then as they find the best use cases, bring the rest of the team with them. Now Neuralink, Musk's company with their sort of brain interface chip. They apparently have, in the last few days, done their first implant into a person's head. And look, this looks like really interesting technology. Of course, there's other companies in this space. It's just that Musk has a unique ability to attract attention and to attract funding, and so it is really interesting, kind of watching how these things progress, and I'm really curious around how does this play out when you give somebody who may not have control of any of their limbs at all, the ability to communicate sort of largely by thought and maybe by eye movements and so on, if that plays out, right?
Yeah, phenomenal. Yeah, if they can use that technology and actually be able to communicate and do things, it's amazing.
So let's wait and see. Hopefully it's not one of those scary dystopian technologies. And then yesterday, seeing Zuckerberg, another one of these, Senate hearings where we saw, the CEOs and mostly founders across top sort of social media type companies. So of course, Mark Zuckerberg representing Meta with especially Facebook and Instagram, Discord CEO, Snapchat CEO, the CEO of TikTok was there, and Linda Yaccarino from X. I guess the bit that came out was these CEOs really being called out to address the online sort of child exploitation and abuse that's been happening through these platforms. And the video that went viral was, Zuckerberg sort of getting called out for this, asked if he had apologised to the families whose lives had been, massively impacted, whether it's, some the youngsters that have lost their lives and so on. So yeah, and he was sort of said no, and so he was called out to apologise, and there was a group there, and you know, he did exactly that, I guess, in the form that he was able to do it. I guess what caught my attention was, you know, how these leaders, and I think of Mark Zuckerberg especially because, yeah, he's been in this position, you know, for a long time. Meta does seem to cause so much damage, and really be, you know, so leaning in towards just what makes them profitable. Not even what makes them a, you know, they don't even care about making themselves look like a good company most of the time, other than, you know, very little sort of tweaks around the edges when you come across people that have had their accounts hacked and those sorts of things. Even people that are maybe, you know, a friend with a startup, they were spending thousands of dollars a month on advertising on Facebook. Account got compromised, and just the complete unwillingness of, you know, of the company to help them at all to be able to resolve this situation. You know, even though you could easily justify it when you look at what was being spent. They go a small way to address different things. So I thought it was really good to see them called out in the manner they were. Maybe somewhat humbling for Zuckerberg to have to respond. I guess my question is kind of, you know, in doing so, did that actually pull at his heartstrings, and is he going to change, and you know, do these leaders really care about the broad populace and other people's families or not? And we've often heard around, you know, whether it's in the Jobs household or Gates household or you know, and I imagine this is the case across social media companies and so on as well. You know, what works for their family is often very, very different to what happens for the rest. So even when your company sells the best of technology and makes the best things, you don't necessarily let your children actually anywhere near a lot of that technology. And it seems to me like there's a huge disconnect here. Am I off base?
No, I don't think so. I think they it's all about profit, isn't it? You know, and I think they need to try and they try and attract younger people to be part of their product, and unfortunately, it's quite a harmful product. So yeah, profit generally rules, though, unfortunately.
So do you think we need regulations, like we've had regulations around tobacco and drugs and so on? You know, there's an argument that the way that social media works and you know, the dopamine hit and so on, that you know, effectively, you know, you can consider it a drug in many ways, and the harm in terms of whether it's, you know, leading to suicides and you know, varying other sort of levels of or varying, you know, aspects of abuse, you know, especially amongst younger people. You know, do we actually need to really, you know, step up with some regulations and define what is and isn't an acceptable, you know, social network? You know, things like more transparent algorithms, so it's understandable what a platform is doing in certain ways, or is that just too hard?
Well, I think we've got to be careful not to over-regulate. I think you want to start with, you know, industry standards, but yeah, I mean, if it's harmful, we should start looking at regulation.
It's, I mean, these things are hard, and even, you know, we're talking earlier around the you know, Google and Facebook and the platforms versus the news companies and who should be paying what and so on. It's not necessarily easy to land on how these things should work, and, you know, of course, you put in place a bunch of regulations, and you know, you might destroy you know, in the case of Meta, I think there's something like a, you know, $1 trillion, you know, type of business in terms of market cap and so on. And of course, these things go up and down. So yeah, and how do you justify that? How do you value the lives that are impacted and so on?
Tricky question.
really, really complicated, isn't it? So I don't think we're going to solve it all today. So sorry to disappoint anyone that thought we were going to solve all the world's problems. But hey, thanks everyone for joining us on this episode of the New Zealand Tech Podcast. Great to have you joining us again. This week we're doing similar as we've sort of started doing. We're experimenting with this year. We're breaking into sort of smaller episodes, so it's been great to have you join us as we talk through some of the tech news that's relevant this week. But we do have another episode to listen into where Peter and I are going to be talking through what's happening with electrifying transport in New Zealand. We're going to be delving into the very challenging task of how do you electrify and charge ferries. And I've got to say, their batteries are a lot larger than your EV if you're driving an electric car at home, and the associated challenges with charging are pretty insane. So that's going to be really fascinating to jump into. So look out for that one. Of course, a big thank you to our show partners, to 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark HP, and Gorilla Technology. We look forward to joining you as we delve into the world of electricity and technology and the crossover and how we do good things with that. Well, thanks, Peter, for joining us. Much appreciated.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Okay, cheers.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.